Welcome back, everybody. It is that time again where we go into the worst of the war. And as always, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan, telling you make sure that you hit that subscribe and that little bell button to get notifications every time new content is posted here on World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Today, though, for the worst of the war, we're taking a look at my favorite faction in all of professional wrestling. And it hurts my heart a little bit to put them on that worst of the war list. But, you know, there's been great factions throughout the entire history of professional wrestling. From the Four Horsemen, Degeneration X, Evolution, go down the line. But today, unfortunately, we're talking about the New World Order. Now, don't get me wrong, the New World Order as it started out with Hall, Nash, and Hogan, perfect, amazing, groundbreaking. The reality-based professional wrestling angle was what the business needed at the time. You know, coming from the back, coming from the audience, jumping people, adding a sense of reality to a very hokey time in professional wrestling. On the other channel, WWF was in there, you know, job gimmicks with things like the Goon and Duke the Dumpster, and there's so many that the business needed that reality check, and the NWO was just that. Everything with the original NWO was just perfect, but unfortunately, that all changed rather quickly. So it's been talked about forever. And forever and a day, and even we've talked about it, Will and myself, on our World Championship Wreckage, you know, the flagship show, about just how the NWO got, you know, oversaturated, and there were just too many people, and there's people that you don't even remember that were in the NWO. We're gonna go through a couple of those here, just some ones that stand out, but I mean, NWO will always be my favorite faction. But there's got to be a time where you cut that line and go, okay, where did it stop being good? We're going to try to figure that out today. So like I mentioned, you know, the initial three, Hall, Nash, Hogan, just perfect and everything. And then you get the addition of Six coming over from being the 1, 2, 3 kid over in the WWF. That was not a bad move. That all made sense. We got Ted DiBiase. You know, that made sense. I mean, it all, initially, it all worked because it was all people that had come from, that were major stars at one time in the World Wrestling Federation. But as it continued, we got names like, they still made sense, but they just didn't seem as important, like Vincent, and as much as I love Brian Adams, you know, there's so many, and like I said, we're going to go through a list here, and there's going to be some names that even I don't remember, just because there's been so many. Like I said, the Ted DiBiase, it was perfect and everything, but even though it was early on, the Giant just never made sense to me, jumping into the NWO. Like, yes, the Giant was in NWO, kicked out, joined back again, and always in NWO Hollywood. But the Giant, to me, just always kind of seemed out of place. But, I mean, it gave him something to do. NWO Sting was cool, but it worked for a short period of time. I just hate that he's just kind of stuck around for a while. I mentioned Vincent. You know, there was a time where the Nasty Boys were in the NWO. It was a very short stint for Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags, but believe it or not, the Nasty Boys were in there. You know, other people made sense, like the addition of Eric Bischoff. I really enjoyed Buff Bagwell being in the NWO. To me, that the NWO worked for Buff Bagwell. It helped elevate him, you know, from being, you know, Marcus Bagwell, tagging, coming from the tag team with Scotty Riggs. But he's one of the few that it helped elevate. Conan was already a big star in Mexico, but the NWO helped elevate him, you know, for the American audience. more people that were big at one point in WWF. Michael Wall Street, aka IRS, Big Bubba Rogers, aka Big Boss Man. You know, this is where we're starting to get the muddiness of the NWO, and it starts to be where you're just like, okay, not everybody needs to be a member, but that's just how it kind of started being. At this time, of course, WCW was doing a lot of work with New Japan, and so there were in New Japan Pro Wrestling, WCW, NWO members over there, like the Great Muta and everything, which I thought was cool because it worked with that partnership. And Muta and Masahiro Chono, they weren't always around, so I was totally fine with them. But you also forget sometimes that they just happen to be in the NWO. Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig, I mean, again, made sense because they were former WWF megastars, both of them. Scott Steiner was a little bit weird to me. I mean, yes, it was a way to elevate him and change his character, which, I mean, I hate to say it, but more modern fans know him as Big Papa Pump, the big bad booty daddy. That Scott Steiner instead of, the great tag team specialist that he was with his brother. And that kind of hurts my heart at times, but to a lot of fans today, that's just how they know Scott Steiner. I think the most ridiculous of all the members of the NWO as it kept getting overcrowded, though, was Nick Patrick. I mean, yeah, and storyline-wise, like, having a referee on your payroll and everything, that makes sense. Of course, they would do that and everything, but it's sold out. The first sold out pay-per-view is a great example. They have their own referee, and members of the NWO have even said it. They have their own referee, and yet they're losing matches on their own pay-per-view. It just didn't make sense. We keep going down the line, and you get Horace Hogan. You get Stevie Ray, and I actually enjoyed Stevie Ray and the NWO. Like, him in the '98 War Games was a lot of fun. Like I said, Barry Windham, was associated but never really an actual member. And then you can easily go down into all the reincarnations of the NWO from, after the Finger Poke of Doom, which a lot of those were, members of either the Wolfpack or the Hollywood NWO previously. But then you get into NWO 2000, which a lot of people can't stand, and I didn't hate it. I wish it would have, if Bret hadn't gotten hurt, which we just covered in our Bret Hartish episode, maybe it would have more ground. But like Jeff Jarrett and Bret Hart, that was his official NWO membership. Go back and watch our Bret Hart episode that Will and I just did and just put out here on the channel. And Bret Hart, people believe he's been in NWO Hollywood for a majority of his time in WCW, but he wasn't. He was a hitman. He was a mercenary. He wouldn't wear the NWO shirts. He'd wear the Hogan shirt, and was just kind of like an affiliate of that. But it's a shame that something that was so popular and so good for the business just it got left with a bad taste in your mouth. And it's for several different things. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth with how muddy it gets in WCW. It gets how muddy and disgusting and taste in your mouth when it comes to, when they move over and the original three move over into the WWF after WCW closes. And then there's different incarnations of that even in WWF, where Booker T and HBK, Shawn Michaels, The Big Show again joining the NWO. So, I mean, the reason that I have to include this in the worst of the war is just because, I mean, something so perfect for the business just tanked. And all of it, and the big part of it is it's just they added too many members. So, I don't know. I'm sure there's more members that I didn't look at on my list that we could keep going down, but I'm not going to make this a super long video. But, yeah, unfortunately, the NWO, I'm going to have to put you on the worst of the war list. And guys, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you can get that notification every time there is new content from World Championship Wreckage. Not only do we have our flagship show, you've got also my show that we're watching right now, Worst of the War, but we've got from XLJ, the OG, back in the day, that comes out every other week. We've also got PWN Pro Wrestling Newbie Reacts from Mr. B-Roll from Cole TV. And you know what, besides that, we've also got creative character writing. Our producer, Jay Knows Wrestling, dives in each and every week at an obscure, weird, forgotten gimmick and character from the world of World Championship Wreckage. And that's just the start. There's new shows coming from a couple people you might know. Continue to check out all of our social media. Make sure you follow on Twitter at WC Wreckage Pod. World Championship Wreckage is also on Threads now. Just look for us. And of course on Instagram at World_Championship_Wreckage. We post the polls each and every week for our flagship show where you can vote on what Will and I are going to talk about on there. But I'm going to let you guys go for tonight. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time on the Worst of the War.